Hi there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Today we are going to be doing a technique that is super simple, however I think it looks really effective, and you can kind of make these pretty clean and simple kind of cards from this technique. Now you can use what you have. Now I picked out these few things. I like using a stencil that has bigger openings, so I kind of had this butterfly and this rose. And for today's technique, we are going to be stamping through stencils. So there's a couple here you could use. This stamp is the Mod Circles. Then the Spellbinders butterfly is the Geometric Butterfly by Spellbinders. And then the bigger stamp, the background stamp, is called the Stippled Circles by Simon Hurley. But we'll get to that in a little bit. I have this rose here that I'm going to create on my card base. So I'm going directly onto my card base for this. This is a really easy, short, sweet technique. So a short video for you today, but I am going to mask off the other areas because this stencil goes really close to the edges and I know my skills aren't that good. I'm using some mint tape. This one is from scrapbook.com and this is the absolute best because especially since I'm working directly on my card base, I do not want to rip my project halfway through. I'm starting off with a couple of colors. Spun Sugar and Warm Lipstick. I am just using some Distress Oxide inks, but honestly, I mean, you could dab a makeup sponge in some acrylic paint and do it that way if you wanted to. You could just use any inks that you have at all. You can use anything for this technique. The Distress Oxides are just nice and handy for me. Then I'm using the corner of my domed foam blender and just trying to highlight a little bit with the darker pink ink. So I'm not trying to kind of fill in, with the Spun Sugar, I just went over the whole stencil really lightly, and then I'm just trying to kind of highlight edges. And I promise you this card basically looks like a hot mess right up until the end. I feel like this card really only came together at the end, and then when I was finished it, I was like, that is really easy and a really cool, fun technique. So this is the Stippled Circles from Simon Hurley. You don't need a background stamp at all. You can use any stamps with any kind of texture. I'm using a charming pink ink. This is just a darker ink that I had. Again, you can use any, but this is the VersaFine clear one. And I'm just going to ink up a little bit of that background that is going to go over the rose. Now I have the stencil still in place so that the stamp is only going to go through the openings of the stencil. And this is the reason why I like to have a stencil that has slightly larger openings rather than smaller ones. So I am going to press down really well on this and in fact get a little tool as well, because you want to make sure that you are getting through the lines of the stencil. So the stencil is creating another extra little layer there of material, so we need to make sure that we are pushing through that. I have a little sneak peek to make sure that it's done its job, and when I lift it off, I know this looks a little wild. It looks a little overwhelming. But I do promise that this is going to come together nicely. Even when I take off the first layer of low-tack tape here, it does look a little bit plain, maybe a little bit, I'm not sure. It didn't quite look right, but sometimes it's worth just continuing on and keep going forward, and then you'll finally see where we are heading. So it does look cool. It does look like it's got some good texture. Now when I was looking at this butterfly, to me this looks like a leaf, this part here, and so I didn't have a nice big leaf that was kind of going to match the look of this rose in a stencil, I mean, and so I decided that why not just use the butterfly. So I do need to do a little bit of masking, so I've taken some of the 4-inch mint tape, and I definitely recommend getting a roll of the 1-inch and the 4-inch. This is incredible masking paper. It is the perfect amount of low tack, tacky enough that it sticks to things, and low tack enough that it is not going to rip your paper, because there is nothing more stressful than getting through a project and pulling up your low tack tape and it rips your paper. That is the ultimate. So I definitely recommend this mint tape. I have cut out just very roughly, very roughly, a mask to go on my little rose here so that I can do some of the leaves. And that leftover piece of low tack tape that I kind of cut away from the rose, I'm going to use that to mask off my so-called leaf from the butterfly wing. Now to me it looks like a leaf, and I've kind of just popped it on this dark background so you can see where I'm heading with this. But if you had one already, I mean, go for gold, but I may as well use a butterfly in as many ways as I possibly can. So I did decide that I needed one on that other side as well where the little circles are. And then this time around we're going to do a similar process. Obviously I'm going to change up the colors a little bit. I chose to just use my finger daubers for this one, and I didn't even use any inks. Often I will find that my finger daubers just have enough ink on them that I can do smaller projects, and that is one of the reasons I absolutely love using them. I definitely am one of those people who lean towards, if I can get away with not getting out all the things when I am crafting, then that does make me happy. So it feels like I don't have to get out all of the ink colours, but I still get to use the ink colours when I'm kind of just using my finger daubers. So I use a couple of different little colours of green, and then I was going to use the lighter green, but actually I ended up going with the darker one, and this one I think just kind of stands out a little bit better because I used quite a dark pink for the rose as well. So all I need to do is ink up just a tiny little corner because this little leaf is small, and then I am just going to mask off the other little areas of card that I could potentially get there. And I can reuse this masking, this low tack tape lots of times. So sometimes I have pieces stuck all over my crafting space, and I know that I can reuse them time and time again, and then once they are well done, then I can get rid of them. And I did think while I was doing these leaves, I mean, you could use anything. If you had a text stamp, that would look really nice through this. Like, it doesn't even just have to be a pattern. It could be large alphabet letters. It could be numbers. It could be swirly patterns. It could be smaller roses that you stamp on the leaves. I mean, it could be anything that you stamp through your stencil. For this one, I was just going pretty plain and simple and using this kind of generic design. However, I mean, you could definitely do so many different options here. Now I decided to come in with a third little leaf, but I wanted this one to kind of cross over one of the other ones, so I'm just going to pop a little bit of tape there as well, and then this one is going to fill up that space nicely. Then by the time I add a sentiment, this card is really looking good. This is probably one that you could add one of those little kind of skinny hand-drawn borders with if you wanted to, but by the time I was finished this one, I just felt like it was really kind of clean and simple, and I just really liked the outcome. It was all done on the card base, so I didn't need to add any extra layers. It was almost one layer if I didn't add a tiny little bit of dimension for the sentiment, and this was going to go through the mail really nicely. It could be used for a whole host of occasions. So we have our little rose and the leaves that are all finished with those gorgeous patterns coming through. Then for the sentiments, I saw this one. I was using this leaf clusters from Altenew stamp set for something else, and then I just saw this little nice little sentiment down here, but I did keep this bit in because I didn't like it once I stamped it on top of the design. So this is "Miss You, my friend," and it just felt a little bit small and lost. But really easy fix, because I was looking at it and thinking, not quite, that kind of missed the mark. So all I'm going to do is take an extra little piece of paper, and sometimes all you need to do to bring your sentiment out is add a little bit of dimension and kind of separate it from your background. So I'm going to use exactly the same stamp. I'm not changing anything up. I'm stamping it in some beautiful crisp VersaFine Onyx black ink, just on a spare little scrap of paper. Then I'm going to use my long bladed Tim Holtz scissors, which are the ones that I find easiest for kind of when I'm doing nice long strokes to get them nice and straight, and then just add a kind of angled edge to it, and then this makes all the difference. It really is surprising what these little details can do to your card making. So if you think it gets a little bit lost, then lift it up just a little bit, and I think that looks a whole lot better. So simple. I could have added things like little gems and bits and pieces to this, but I just really like the simplicity of this. So let me know if you have given this technique a go in the comment section down below, and what kind of stamps and things you like to use for this technique. Do you like to use like shapes and just kind of generic little designs, swirls and twirls and dots and all those kinds of things? Or what do you kind of reach for to put through your stencils? So stamping over top of stencils. Here is my really simple but gorgeous design for today. Thank you so much for joining me for stamping through stencils, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks, bye!